magic.
I love this. I'm scared.
We are live. Well, good evening, authority members. I'm going to call to order the April 13, 2023 NVTA business meeting. Mr. Jonathan, will you please call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Vice Chair Snyder. Here. Supervisor Alcorn. Chair Wheeler.
Here.
Board Member Crystal.
Here.
Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Davis Younger.
Present.
Mayor Rischel.
Here.
Mayor Reed.
Here.
Senator Boysko. Supervisor Harity.
Here.
Mr. Bedell. Ms. Hines.
Here.
Mr. Cole. Mayor Wood. Mr. Lynch.
Here.
Mr. Horsley.
Here.
And just want to note that Supervisor Alcorn will be joining. us
He is
just now.
on.
He's on, okay.
Here,
Supervisor Alcorn, can you hear us?
yes, I can.
Thank you so much for calling in. Authority members, is there a motion? I'm assuming you all read your meetings from the March 9th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. Moved by Ms. Chair Wheeler. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Councilmember Snyder. Is there a discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Alcorn, for saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And we have one abstention, that's Ms. Crystal. That motion to approve the minutes will pass. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alcorn.
All right, thank you.
All right. So authority members, what that all was is, we have to have, is it two-thirds quorum to vote on anything, and we can have just a simple quorum to have a meeting, have presentations, those types of things. But to vote, we have a two-thirds quorum, and since Fairfax County is 45% of the vote, somebody who was appointed by Fairfax County to be on the authority has to be here for that vote. Mr. Harity is here, and I appreciate that. Mr. Harity is your speaker's appointee, not the appointee for Fairfax County. So I wasn't disrespecting Mr. Harity. It's just that he doesn't represent Fairfax County.
Well, I do.
Not in this body. Not in this body.
We got done at 5:30 today with budget posting, so it worked out pretty good.
Okay, all right. Well, that's the case. I'm gonna call Jeff and Walter anyway. and say, where are you? So that's why that happened like that. We also only have presentations or discussion items for that very reason tonight. We do not have any action items tonight on the agenda. However, it's kind of nice we can get a lot of the presentations and discussion items done so that they're not here for next month's agenda. I will also say that item number 5 will be a deferment from the agenda this evening. We'll put that in the agenda. I'll put that in the agenda for the next authority meeting because Mr. Bedell could not make it to talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. He couldn't make it this evening. He had a emergency. And so we will take that up next time. So we will do move on at this point to item number 4, which is the Dominion Energy Electric Communication item. And we're looking for Kate's in. Hi.
Go to the podium, or do you have a preference?
Yeah, right in the center. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right in the center.
Right in
Yes,
there.
good to be here. Thank you.
No, we believe that this is comfortable here.
Absolutely. Okay, before I start, does everyone have a copy, or do you want me to present? Let's do this.
We'll pull up the
I can pull it up.
Oh, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Give me one.
While he's pulling that up, I'm Kate Staples. I'm the Director of Electrification for Dominion. So I work out of Richmond. But most of you guys are familiar with our service territory. So we certainly have the major metropolitan areas, including the Northern Virginia area. So I'm excited to be here today.
To me, it's an electric company. It feels like you just running the whole thing.
Say it again?
So to me, you guys are an electric company, so you just run the whole thing,
Yes.
Director of Electrification.
Yes, yes, it's a very cool title. My team does call me, sometimes they call me the EV Queen, and I like that title a little bit better. But yes, I'll take it.
This is like obesity guy. Here.
Perfect. And just a reminder on time check, how much time would you like me?
How much time do you need?
I mean, I can talk for 5 minutes or 5 hours about it. I can have a 10 or 15 minutes.
Talk for 5 hours, would you be all by yourself?
Right,
10 minutes would be great, yeah.
We'll shoot for 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay. And the questions, exactly. We have to do a presentation, but it's there.
I apologize, it's giving me some challenges just to pull up a PDF.
Okay.
Sorry.
But they have it in their packet, so.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start, if that's okay.
Now it's showing.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, well, so we'll start first with the first slide, which is just a brief overview of the electric vehicle market. I know from looking at some of the folks that are on the authority that most of you are probably pretty familiar with electric vehicles. So I'm not going to start with an EV one-on-one, but if you do have questions about how electric vehicle works, how electric vehicle charging works, we have tons of videos, information, and calculators on our website. But so I'll start a little bit about what we were seeing in the EV market. So on the left side of the screen, you're seeing what's going on really nationwide. Now that certainly does impact Virginia, but those are some of the metrics that we're seeing nationwide. So the first one is what we call a tipping point. So Bloomberg, Forbes, a lot of the major publications ran some articles last year about how the United States national EV sales market share for 2022 exceeded 5%. It was 6%. And what they've seen looking at countries that have more electric vehicles than the United States, so think in Europe and in China, that once you hit 5%, you're really hitting a tipping point towards mass adoption. And so I was encouraged to see that Virginia EV sales market share for last year was actually more than 6%. It was at 8%. So I think Virginia is well on that way to mass adoption. So why is that happening? One of the main reasons is automakers are committing to more electric vehicle models. So when I first started this job 5 or 10 years ago, there was the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Volt, which work, passenger cars work well for a lot of people, but not everyone. If you have fishing equipment, dogs, children, things like that, you wanted more models. So there's probably 70 or 80 models available now. And nearly every major auto manufacturer has committed to targeting at least 50% sales of electric vehicles by 2030. And then a lot of them have also committed to phasing out some of their internal combustion vehicles. We call those ICEs, internal combustion engine vehicles. So that's one big reason why there's been a tipping point in sales. And the second one is certainly very important. I know that you were going to have a presentation on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and potentially on the Inflation Reduction Act. But even without that presentation, I'm sure you've heard a lot about it. So there's lots of federal policies to provide incentives on the vehicles and on charging. So that's certainly accelerating EV sales. We call these generational grant opportunities. Some of these grants did exist, but never at the funding level that we've seen now. They went from thousands to millions to billions. So this is certainly what we call generational in terms of grant opportunities and incentives. And lastly, state policy. So Virginia is a ZEV state, meaning Virginia adopted the California Clean Cars Rule, which encourages more EV sales, so more sales on the lots in Virginia, and phasing out of internal combustion engine vehicles. But what we've seen in, so Virginia has service territory and others, Dominion has service territory in areas other than Virginia, like North Carolina and South Carolina. So what we've seen is even states that haven't signed on for the Clean Cars Act, because of the other bullets, the tipping point, the EV models and the EV incentives, even states that haven't yet signed on to the Clean Cars Act, they're seeing big changes in adoption as well. And then on the right side of the screen is more of a Virginia focus. At the end of 2022, depending on the data you look at, anywhere between 55 and 66,000 electric vehicles on the roads in Virginia. We forecast by 2030, there will be about 500,000 EVs in Dominion's territory in Virginia, and by 2050, over 4 million EVs. For perspective, there's 7 to 8 million cars in Virginia, or vehicles in Virginia, so that includes everything from a passenger vehicle up to a heavy-duty tractor trailer. Next slide, please. So what do we think our role is? Dominion Energy's priorities and role in electric transportation are first to make it easy to adopt, break down the barriers and not be a barrier to adoption for our customers. 2 is universal access to EV charging. So making sure residential, commercial, industrial fleets, municipalities all have access to reliable EV charging and to an electric grid that supports EV charging. And the third one is supporting demand growth. So supporting that, making sure our grid is reliable, affordable, and clean to power these electric vehicles. You can go to the next slide. One of the biggest things about that first bullet, ease of adoption, is education. When I first started this job, one of my counterparts at another utility, and then also one of our stakeholders at the Sierra Club, told me the exact same piece of advice. If you spend 1 minute or $1, spend it on education. It's really important for us to not only educate customers on the benefits of electric vehicles, but how to make them work for them. One of the best things about electric cars is they're really convenient and they can make your life a lot easier. So you want to make sure that you're educating customers on those benefits and how an electric vehicle fits into their lifestyle versus telling them how much they would have to change if they switch to an electric vehicle. So we have a lot of education and outreach items on our website, which is at the end of this presentation. The second is a new tool that we just launched in November. We've been rolling out iterations. Within a month of having it, I think we had over 100 visits, and it's a pretty niche tool, so 100 visits is a lot. We rolled out something called a hosting capacity map. So we did a poll on social media last year and seeing what customers' #1 question about electric vehicles was. And I thought it would be, where do I charge it? How do I charge it? What if I run out of electric, run out of gas? No way. The #1 question is the grid ready? So we launched a hosting capacity map to show that the grid is ready and it will continue to be ready. So that tool shows it's color coded, and you can look at addresses in our territory and see how much capacity is available. This is for installing big charging, big fleets. Think those superchargers you see in the Target and Walmart parking lots, that type of charging, not necessarily for your house. And speaking of fleets, we just launched some new fleet tools. So we've had consumer and passenger EV tools on our website for a couple of years. Tons of really great feedback and a lot of engagement with customers. But the past couple months, we were really hearing, hey, those tools are great for passenger vehicles and maybe fleets that have a couple passenger vehicles, but real fleets, complex fleets, needed some fleet-specific tools. Dominion Energy, we have 8,000 or 9,000 vehicles. We have a very complex duty cycles in our fleet. So these fleet tools help customers compare vehicles, see what their fuel and carbon and maintenance savings would be, see what the impact of their electric bill would be, and what type of charging infrastructure they would need. Next slide, please. And there's a lot on this slide. You have it in your packet, so I'll just go across the top and the bottom. So we have customer-facing EV programs. So in addition to our education and outreach tools, these are programs for customers, and they focus on charging at home, charging on the go, charging your fleet, and making sure that charging is available for everyone, that universal access to EV charging. So I listed some of the programs and offerings that we have here. They're also on our website. But I think the bottom part of this slide is the most important. Why do we have charge programs for charging at home? Because we know from our data and from the industry that 80% of charging happens at home. Why do we have programs for charging on the go? Because when we did our surveys, the grid was the #1 question. But when nationwide surveys, charging availability was the #1 consumer concern. Why do we have programs for our fleet? EVs cost less to fuel and maintain, which is really good for fleets, really good for municipalities, and that also helps all communities. And lastly, charging for everyone. We know in Virginia and nationwide that poor air quality often disproportionately impacts lower income communities. Think about communities that are near highways, transportation depots, bus stops, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're making sure we get the benefits of electrification, that clean air into those communities. And I think last slide. Okay, this is my last slide. I always end with this slide because it's my favorite program I've worked on at Dominion. Our electric school bus initiative is a nation-leading initiative. It's the largest one in the country, where we partner with school districts to help them transition to electric school buses. So I tried to look at some of the cities that were here today. We have electric school bus partners in Falls Church, Fairfax, Alexandria, Fredericksburg, Prince William, Loudon. And we're expanding to other school districts right now with folks who are getting funding from the federal government or state government through grant funding. So why would we do this? Well, certainly because we think of ourselves as more than just electric utilities. We are public service companies, and we want to provide this service to our communities. And what better way than to help improve our school children in our schools? I'm a mom. I'm a Dominion Energy employee and customer, and this is absolutely one of the best initiatives that I've ever worked on. We partner with these school districts and help them make that transition by providing the charging infrastructure for them, which is certainly a help to their pocketbook. But what it's really a help for is they don't have time to learn how to use a new charging station and make sure it's up and running all the time. So we do that for them. What do we get in return? When these school buses are not being used for student transportation, so certainly not, Monday through Friday during the school year, we can use these buses as battery storage, which helps us make better use of renewables. It can help us offset some future costly grid upgrades. And so it's really a win-win for everyone. So there's some photos up there of that. And then the last slide is our website and contact information. Electrification@dominionenergy.com comes directly to my team. So if you need me, that one.
That was fantastic. Questions? Board members, yes, sir.
Thank you for that presentation. You guys had a program, SCIP, that I think sunset last year. And I guess in my conversations with your team, they've indicated that something new is coming this year. Can you give us some information on that?
So your packet is the slide you have open right now.
Yep.
So skip the smart charging infrastructure program, skip the gas stations, skip the emissions, it was adorable. When we launched that program, it was rebates for customers, and guess what? We didn't sell out. So we even kept trying to extend the program, and when we asked customers, why didn't we sell out? The biggest feedback that we got was, to get a rebate, you have to install a charger. So that means you have to put up the capital, find someone to install it, figure out where to install it, figure out how to use it, find out who's going to use it. That's how rebate programs work. We don't tell you what to do. We don't tell you what to buy. We just give you a rebate when you do it. So what we heard was, we need more help. Certainly there are customers out there that are sophisticated and have the time and the capital, but for the most part, we heard we need something more turnkey. So what you see on the slide there is we just got approval last year, and we're in the process of rolling out new programs that provide that turnkey service. There are incentives involved, but we will install and maintain the infrastructure for you, and you can pay over time on your bill.
Okay. Yeah, I think the reason I ask is the folks I hear from the most, and I think some of this is a characteristic of Alexandria, is a ton of our population lives in multifamily buildings, in both condo regimes as well as multifamily rentals, and they're looking for ways to get infrastructure in place to support this, and it's not something they can do on their own. And I believe some had used previously this program in the past, and so trying to find tools to help, particularly multifamily buildings, try to figure out ways to put this infrastructure in. And I think anything you guys can do to assist is helpful.
One of the programs on there, and it's on our website, is specifically for multifamily customers. So we have carved out specifically for them. So if they are interested and they want to go to our website and just fill out an interest form, it comes directly to my team, and we'll call them.
Okay. But the program's not yet launched, or it's launching?
You can fill out an interest form, and we'll send you all the information. You can't put your metal in the ground until we finish our final risk assessments of our contractors.
Okay.
But we're close.
Okay, all right.
Good question. I have a question. On slide 4, when you talk about the hosting capacity, and you said the main question was, is the grid ready? Is it safe to assume that question meant, that answer, when you said absolutely the grid is ready, means that the electricity is available versus the charging infrastructure is in place?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, all right.
We do need more charging infrastructure.
Right. And secondly, I hear a lot of people, it's interesting to see that instead of charging happens at home. Doesn't surprise me, but I like seeing that. Because I hear a lot of people that say, I would get an electric vehicle if I could find like a fast charging, you know, because I'm not gonna be in the mall for 3 hours. Not me, I will be in the mall for 3 hours. But some people might not be in the mall for 3 hours, and they want to have a faster charge. Is there something different that you have to do with the grid and are charging to get fast charging?
So a lot of that is education. Your car is parked 23 hours of the day. So you really want to find places where you're going to be for a while. So your job, so
Or
overnight,
church.
workplace charging,
Yeah.
church, gym, Target, I'm at Target for 3 hours, things like that.
Yeah.
But if you're going on a road trip, or if you don't have access to charging at home, you are going to need a fast charger. Fast charging, when we talk about fast charging, we talk about high capacity, 480 volts, 3-phase power. So it's the type of power that like a Walmart or a distribution center would use. So it's big capacity, which is why people don't install them at their houses. So when folks say, hey, I really need to find a fast charger, I've been driving an electric car for 4 years. I've used a fast charger. I might have to use it on the way home today, as that would be my 6th time in 4 years. Because I charge at home and at work.
But the map you're going to have, or the map that you have, that map would have where you find fast chargers at.
Yes, that's where the
hosting
map that's
capacity
on there. So our website has 2 maps. The hosting capacity map shows where chargers are now. So if you're a developer and you're like, hey, I really want to put in a fast charger, you can look at the map and say, oh, great, there's capacity there, and there's not already a charger next door. Because the last thing we want to do is strain the grid in a certain area by having 3 installations within a 1-mile radius when it would be great for everyone to stand them out. So that's what that map does. There's another map on our website where you type in your zip code and it'll show you where the fast chargers are.
All right, thank you.
Your car will do it too. An electric vehicle will tell you.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Sort of following up on that, 2 questions. The first one on the charging. The whole thing seems chaotic at this point. I mean, COG has a program, somebody else does, but it doesn't seem to be organized and comprehensive. Do you have a recommendation for what ought to be done and maybe what MBTA could do? And you don't need to, I know it's kind of an interesting question and you may not want to answer it tonight, but I am interested in trying to bring some order out of this and actually get it done. And I know you guys are trying to do various elements of it, but it still seems way too chaotic to me.
It's fragmented, I agree. I think all new technologies are very fragmented. Solar did, and so I think that is a characteristic right now. I do think it will improve. I'm looking at some of the localities and organizations that are here today, and we've worked with quite a few localities that have done their own transportation plans. We can help them do that, but they can also use their own resources to do that. So I would encourage folks to work on those plans, because I think one of the things that makes it fragmented is there's so many stakeholders. There's so many interested folks. And so it would be great to harness that interest into a plan instead of it being so fragmented when you're actually trying to put the metal in the ground.
Okay. The second question is, what percentage of Dominion Energy is produced using renewables as opposed to fossil fuels?
Our IRP will be published May 1st, and we'll have that in there, the new updated number. But right now, our grid is about 40% carbon neutral. So that includes nuclear, hydro, and renewables. So, and over time, as the grid gets cleaner, the fuel source for the electric vehicles gets cleaner. Gas and diesel, they don't get cleaner.
Well, thank you that you are excited about your position. And
I
love
do,
that. I love that it comes
Yeah,
through.
it really
That's
is.
wonderful. It really does. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
Okay, authority members, we're going to go on to item number 6, the update transportation planning board facilitate listening sessions on the proposed visualized projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will note we had a few authority members in attendance at that listening session. It was virtual. The Transportation Planning Board had them with Virginia, Maryland, and the district. And from Virginia, we had Vice Chair Snyder, Mayor Rochelle, and Mr. Lynch, who participated. And essentially, the TPP was hosting these listening sessions so that the transportation agencies and the localities could understand and be aware of the TPB's goals and priorities. And it gave us the opportunity to speak to our goals and priorities. And I think the takeaway was that we have a lot in common regarding the goals and priorities and how we get to the funding of a project. But I did want to acknowledge the 3 authority members who were in attendance at the listening session in case they have anything to add. But this really spawned from 2021 when the TPB adopted resolution, I think it was 19-2021. And it really requires the TPB to look at zero-based budgeting. In short, what that meant, if projects that do not have funding on them would be resubmitted for consideration into the CLRP. Now, what the TPB is doing now, all projects are being resubmitted, but a project that currently has funding on it is supposed to be exempt from being not being able to move forward. But the TPB, they adopted in their long range transportation plan, it's called Visualize 2045. They adopted it last year in 2022, but for the next round, they are trying to make sure all of the projects that are currently being vetted that does not have funding on it or is not under construction. And of course, if you're under construction, then you have funding on your project, that you make sure that the project is in alignment with the TPB's goals and policy. We do have some questions. And we've shared these questions with Mr. Shrikant because we want to be clear, because this Commonwealth, VDOT, the Commonwealth via Smart Scale and their other funding programs, in addition to MBTA, we are heavily invested in the projects that we fund, in addition to what localities are funding. So at the listening session, it afforded MBTA, VDOT, a lot of your jurisdictions as well, to just inform the TPB members, and for us, it was the Virginia TPB members, of our processes on how a project gets from conception to funding and then is submitted to the TPB. Getting to some of the questions that we have, and this is going to be a process, and we've shared these questions with Mr. Shrikant. One of the things that we want to know, and this is why I'm sharing this with you all today, because as you know, when we fund a project, we do not implement projects. When we fund a project, someone else, either the localities or you contract out with someone else to do the implementation. But one of the questions we had, when a jurisdiction or agency submits a project that is not in the current CLRP, but has recently received funding, and that will be applicable to us because you approved the call for projects last month. The portal opens in May. We're looking at approval in July of next year, but we are still in the process, or we're initiating the process of another funding cycle. When we do that, will the projects have to go through this orange or green examination list? So let me tell you what orange and green means. Green projects are projects that are already under construction or have funding identified. So these projects should be able to proceed without issue. And then there's the orange list. The orange list are projects that have no committed funding. Now we, in addition to your localities, in addition to VDOT, we've been reviewing the list because we have found some errors where projects that have been identified as orange has actually had funding on it and things of that nature, because we want to be very, very clear. But we want to get from the TPB, particularly since they put in their staff memo from February 9, 2023, that they suggest that projects on the orange list may be dropped from the CLRP. And I know that was a mouthful, but I did want to put that out there because it's a lot for staff to try to follow. And you have different staff sometimes that attend the authority member meetings versus the TPB meetings. Another comment we have, the process for the zero-based budgeting, we would like a little more clarity to understand how a project will be evaluated to decide if it advances the TPB's goals and policy. So we want to know, once the project is submitted, and for our purposes, VDOT is the entity that really submits the projects to the TPB. All of the projects we fund, the projects that you're funding on your own, they are submitted through VDOT. We would like to know how will these projects be evaluated to ensure alignment with the TPB's goals and policies? The other thing, air quality conformity. Of course, the TPB as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, it is their job legally to conduct an air quality conformity analysis or determination. And it's usually carried out on the plan level, not on a project level. So we want to know if it is the intent for the TPB to do the air quality conformity analysis project by project or on the overall plan. And then we have some other questions as we continue to work with the TPB, because of course, we care about greenhouse gas emissions, climate change, and things of that nature. But again, you all are embarking on a next update to the 6-year funding program. We don't know just yet, are these projects, because they have funding on, because this is another question we had. Well, if a project has funding on it, is this just at this point in time? Because we do our funding programs biannually. So, or is it that if the authority, once we adopt a funding program, are these projects quote unquote exempt because they have funding on them? That's a lot. It is a lot. And I will pause there to see if Mayor Rischel, Councilmember Snyder, or Mr. Lynch has anything to add.
I have nothing to add.
Well, just quickly, first off, I think the process itself for the listening session went off very well. And I think I want to thank the staffs of the localities that presented, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, as well as Arlington and Alexandria, because they presented how they select the projects, which, as Ms. Bachman said, are consistent with what TPB is looking for. As we move forward, I think the key questions that are going to come up, I mean, they're trying to accommodate these projects, but it really, I think the emphasis is on the localities to look at those, as well as VDOT, to look at those projects and determine if they meet their criteria as well as are consistent with the TPB, because that's really where the decision is. It's not with TPB in terms of their responsibility is to run the model and the air conformity analysis. And so that's really the process in itself. So we hope that we don't get into, we're going to drop this project or that, but I'm sure there'll be some of that malarkey going on. We'll see.
Malarkey.
Yeah, I think the process is useful, painful, but useful. And I do think that under the structure, the TPB has tended to be a rubber stamp. And the reality is that it has the capability of being more than that, but it needs to be extremely careful because the states have a key role to play and so do the localities. So I think this is an iterative process. I think it's useful that the TPB doesn't just take a vote, oh, we think X, Y, and Z, and nothing happens to that. On the other hand, TPB needs to be careful that it doesn't intrude on legitimate decision-making by the states and the localities. So I think finding that balance is sort of the process that we're engaged in now, but I would agree, I thought that it went pretty well.
Anybody else? Who's the other person that was there?
Mayor Rischel, but she's
Okay, right. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right.
and we will keep you updated.
Item number, thank you, Inspector. Item number 7, the program recommendation for the CMAQ.
So last month, you actually approved CMAQ and RSTP recommendations for fiscal year 2029. We always do it for the out years, and we've been doing it that way for several years. But in conversations with VDOT, I'm happy to share that there are some additional CMAQ and RSTP monies that have been identified. It resulted in an additional $2 million in CMAQ funds and 12.4 million in RSTP funds for the region. Staff worked with the Regional Jurisdiction and Agency Coordinating Committee, which is comprised of all of the localities and transportation agencies, to identify projects that had already previously been vetted by this body to try to make the additional funding allocations on. And these recommendations were discussed and approved at the RJAC March 23rd meeting. And we do have the spreadsheet in here, even though you'll probably need. You'll probably need a magnifying glass to try to really see, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions.
That makes me sound glad you rejected it.
And just out of process, these recommendations, they do go to the CTV for them to take action on in June. This is what we are.
We have to trust what you're saying, isn't it?
And your staff did agree to these recommendations. Don't worry. Your staff did agree to these recommendations, and it's an information item because you have previously, well, they previously approved these allocations.
Yeah, makes elected officials not ask questions. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Bagman. Number 8, so Mr. Loki is not here.
He's sitting behind you.
Oh, what? Never do that. Before that, though, Ms. Wishaw, would you like to, yes, over this?
Yes, thank you,
item?
Madam
Yeah.
Chair. The Finance Committee did not need to meet this month, but I appreciate the opportunity to report on current and future activities. The recently adopted policy change regarding excluding invoices older than 18 months from reimbursement is having a significant impact, even prior to the June 9th implementation date. Since MBTA staff began advising their regional counterparts of the implementation, reimbursement requests have gone from about equal to last year, which was really the worst one on record, to about 160% of last year. The duplicate audit process that protects the authority from inadvertent mistakes by project sponsors is continuing, and that should be finalized by the time, finalized on time this summer. MBTA staff has begun to review revenue estimates for FY24 through FY29. These estimates will come to the committee for consideration. They are central to determining the pay-go level for projects funding for project funding for the upcoming FY28-29 project selection for this spring to 2024. The Northern Virginia Regional Commission, who is the authority's landlord, has been invited to present the upcoming office lease renewal to the Finance Committee. Details of the NVRC presentation topics are included in the committee report in your packet. Finally, the finance team is preparing recommendations and options for the committee related to updating portfolio performance benchmarks. Also, policy updates are being prepared as part of submitting the authority's investment policy for national and international certification. There are details written in the committee report in your packet. And with that, I would ask Mr. Longview if he has anything to add. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, wonderful. We're going to move on to the Governance Personnel Committee report, which is a very short report today from Ms. Maynard, because it was just one item in the governor's mini budget that applied to MBTA at all. So,
thank you, Madam Chair. You recall the TRIP Ridership Incentive Program, TRIP, which many of our jurisdictions have had great wins for getting grants from them. The General Assembly expanded availability of what initiatives can be funded, and how it came out of the General Assembly. Up to 30% of the TRIP funds could be used for transitioning to electric vehicles for your transit agency, and also for expanding accessibility or improving accessibility to transit, ADA compliance, bus stops, bus shelters. Both of those are recommendations coming out of the Transit Equity and Modernization Study. The governor did submit recommendations to an amendment. He removed the electric vehicle transition activities from eligibility and added safety issues, particularly safety for passengers, drivers, and transit staff. Those amendments were accepted by the General Assembly, and so that is the bill that is going back to the governor, and we expect that he will sign it. And as of July 1, that's with the TRIP program. We'll have that additional expanded eligibility. CTB will sign off on some guidelines that will be developed by DRPT staff. And so as discussed, there'll be a grant application opening sometime later this year. The other item that we discussed at GPC was looking forward to 2024. And it was, Ms. Hines talked about what they're seeing, and again, safety numbers on our roads are unfortunately serious injuries and fatalities continue to rise in Virginia. And the great data that VDOT produces, we've had presentations on it here, in terms of policy issues, speed for sure is a large contributor. And the question is there expanded, could there be expanded authority to use speed cameras in more targeted areas, particularly if you have data that shows these are high incident corridors or segments of corridors. So our current legislative program talked about supporting additional safety policy measures. There were a few that passed this year, but certainly speed cameras is something General Assembly talks about a lot, and there's limited authority right now in school zones and work zones. And I know most of the localities, I think right now, have just about approved policies and implemented for school zones. So I think having real life data in terms of what impact that has on safety in those corridors might help broaden discussion of that in the General Assembly.
Besides substance use and speed, are there any other major things that lead to serious accidents?
Distracted driving.
Distracted driving.
Yeah, so it's distracted driving, speed, and driving under the influence, rightly defined.
And lack of wearing a seatbelt.
Well, and lack of wearing a seatbelt. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Was there any discussion of increased funding for pedestrian education, sort of on the order of personal responsibility?
Yes, so it's interesting, there's sort of two different pockets of initiatives. And that comes in under the idea of access, frankly, to be perfectly honest, distracted driving and seatbelts under behavioral matters. And so CTV has actually reprogrammed some additional funding. State's gotten some additional funding, we're getting some additional federal funding. So there will be some additional, even more emphasis on behavioral changes, getting the public to understand you need to wear a safe belt. You all see that buzz driving is impaired driving. When you survey users of marijuana, they don't think that they're impaired. So that's an education issue.
I mean, for pedestrians.
It's interesting for pedestrians. I don't recall
So the
pedestrian focused ones. I mean, there probably are. I just don't remember them.
All running through DMV. So we actually, the CTV does not have control over that money. It's the folks at DMV who manage all that. So I would suggest going to their website and just sort of seeing that they actually have millions of dollars to spend on education.
Millions and millions.
It's a real sore point with this. We could probably do it better, but we don't have the authority.
And I can't believe I'm about to say this because I never think like this, but my God, how long are we going to talk about wearing seatbelts? I mean, any knucklehead that doesn't know any knucklehead over the age 18 that doesn't know they should be wearing seatbelts, I'm not sure any more kids are going to do it. At this point, I'm ready to give them not incentives for punishment.
Well, that's.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
The thing we need to push for on seatbelts is that not wearing your seatbelt can get you a ticket and cause you
Yeah,
a
I'm cool with
fine.
that.
Because if you can only give that ticket if you stop them for something.
Something else, yeah.
It is not the first
Yeah,
offense,
yeah.
and having it be first offense would put a bunch more tools.
I'm fine with it. I'm surprised I'm saying that, but I mean, gracious,
I mean, it's kind of crazy.
you know, I mean,
And I
drunk driving
do,
is drunk driving. Wear your seatbelt, don't drive. These are not new ideas.
no, but speeds are up all across the country, and reckless driving is up all across.
I understand that this distracted driving, that's kind of a newer.
Well, that's a phone thing.
It's a
but-
phone thing,
But
yeah.
I mean, people are distracted by all sorts of
Yeah, they
things,
are.
including other people in
Yeah,
their cars.
yeah.
So.
Just to
not
the
just
radio, put your lipstick
If you're
on.
taking a bite of your Big Mac.
Mr. Herring is okay, simulating the
It's
cheat.
food.
Yeah.
Putting on your makeup on the 495, so it's my favorite.
The next time they give us this chart that is basically a matrix that shows every activity here and then the same
Yeah.
activities across the
Fascinating.
top. And so
I'd
you
love to see
the
that, yeah,
intersection.
I'd love
I'll
to see
send
that.
it to Monica.
Please do,
because
yeah.
it's, it is very.
Yeah.
It's frightening and amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beyond, Madam Chair, beyond behavioral aspects, which are really important, I'd like to see us be able to have additional funding for
Just driving.
pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. Because if people are going to continue to drive the way they are, and need to work on that, you really need to double down on your infrastructure. You really need to have the protected crosswalks, the hawk signals, the other things that that have been difficult to get funded under the current criteria. So,
Well, actually, there's both. With the additional federal money, the state has had more safety funds being pushed down to localities. TAP could be used, but it's, again, we're doing out years at this point, but TAP can be used for
No,
sure.
tap is
Oh,
in
that's right,
years
there's more
1 and
media,
2.
that's right, every
And
student.
the portal will open for tap sometime later this fall.
It's the Transportation Alternative Program, sorry, do acronyms. So there is more money coming to localities from safety, but I'm not sure how the formula is put to how it gets to people.
We made a decision several years ago to take all the highway safety money and put it into what are called systemic improvements, where the yellow back plates came from, behind all of the lights, the flashing yellow arrows, on the interstates, a lot of signage for curbs where people were literally driving off the road. You know, once you get out of our urban areas, most of the fatalities happen because people leave the road. So the rumble strips in the middle of the road, the wedge and the rumble strip at the edge to kind of push you back. So that money is all programmed. It runs all the way out to 2030, and it's really kind of upsetting that it's that far out to get all these things that we know actually save lives. At the same time, there is a bit more money, and I know that the commissioner put out a call, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago for spot improvement projects, and he got so many and didn't really have a process in place to figure out how to choose. He didn't think he would get as many as he got. So he kind of pulled it back, and he's been working on it. I will say that we have had long conversations about safety at every CTP meeting in the last 6 months. And the board has really pushed for some more nimble money that could actually be used, you know, to solve a problem. The guy from Virginia Tech, who was part of the technology roundtable, had some really good sort of like, here's what, you know, you have a hotspot, here's what you need to do. We don't support that, we being the state, we don't support you getting that camera in there right away and helping, you know, with the recording and the analysis. We could do that, we don't. So so that's been a conversation. It's going to keep being a conversation. Everybody's kind of crazy.
I was thinking about it just as an aside too, to the extent it feels like there's less money to do those things. I don't know about you, I suspect in Falls Church, we used to use our 30% funds that got zeroed out in 2018. So back to our chair's favorite topic, I think it feels like there's not enough money to go around for those types of tactical improvements. There isn't. But I do really appreciate knowing the efforts at the CTP level. I was gonna ask, I mean, this conversation certainly puts me in mind of what I suspect a lot of our jurisdictions are working on, which is a Vision Zero goal is sort of the way to bring all this together. And I wondered if we had any cognizance of the state. I was remembering this in 2018, 2019, signed on to the Towards Zero Death Initiative, which was going to be a statewide version of what we were doing locally, capturing lots of data. I just went to look at the website and it just takes me back to DMV now. So to our knowledge, is that just sort of died on the vine with the change in administration?
I don't know this for 100% yet, surely, but yes, I would say as much as the secretary talks about the deaths are going in the wrong direction and asked us to adopt, lower numbers that were acceptable, we've changed nothing. We've changed nothing. We have to do new numbers for NHTSA or for the National Highway Trend, whatever, for the Federal Highway Administration sometimes. But it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I wonder to what extent we may want to consider that in future legislative packages to just, to me, having that sort of coordinated effort is really helpful. Otherwise, it can feel like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? Because these things are interrelated, and at least locally, we found you can say, look, X% of deaths are, there's a drunk driver involved. At Y% of deaths, the structural condition of the roadway indicated that there could have been a change. I think that helps in terms of organizing where to prioritize money. So if there's not even a push to gather and organize and think about data in that way, then if we really are just going to be kind of ad hoc in our efforts to address it.
I think the data on cause is there.
Cause is there, okay.
I think what Ms. Hines talked about is collecting the data to show you, particularly for spot improvements, like where
are the hotspots?
Where the hotspots are. I don't know.
And we even have hotspot data, but sometimes we don't know what the reason is that this place
crosswalk of
is.
cause.
So, yeah, you do,
Yeah,
and that's where putting a camera sometimes, because the other thing is what we know are fatalities and injuries. What we don't know are near misses. And particularly in urban areas, I think near misses are something that you almost have to pay more attention there, because your odds just are increasing with every near miss that you're going to have an accident. And the state's numbers, I think the number will be that 17% of the deaths statewide are now on the bike path. So we've crossed a threshold, but because of the decision that we made about doing these systemic improvements, we are already spending above the amount that the feds would require us to spend. Another thing to think about, and I haven't done the analysis, I don't know, but I know that our percentage here in Northern Virginia is higher than 17% of the fatalities and injuries. And so one of the questions I think for this body and for your jurisdictions is, should there be a differential treatment where your numbers are higher versus, it's not one
Our
size.
numbers higher because we have more people who are walking in. So
I would say, and
so
we
the
have-
numbers are higher, but the percentages might not be higher.
Our numbers are higher, I think,
Okay.
our percentages are higher.
Okay.
Over the last 5 years, where the state's been around 14, 15%, Nova is between 25 and 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. So thinking about that from a legislative point of view, maybe talking to some very knowledgeable General Assembly members from this region and sort of bringing that to them and saying, maybe there's a way that some formula needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
To make sure that we who are experiencing the major impact are getting a bigger bite of the apple. I mean,
Well, and I'll just note too, before stating the floor, that Delegate Rum did introduce a bill this year that would have created state funds for the types of Vision Zero improvements of the kind that Mr. Snyder was talking about. So that may be something to track and
I mean, one of the things that I would love to see happen in smart scale, but I don't think is going to, would be a much more sophisticated way to look at, does this project really address some of the access for disadvantaged communities, the greenhouse gas and the safety, so trying to rank our projects that way. I don't think we're going to get there with this administration, but it's a long-term thing. I think those who are going to be around for keep in the back of their minds.
Just food for thought. We actually just 2 days ago passed a pilot for red light cameras and school speed zones and construction. It's just a pilot for a year, sites throughout the county. And one of the reasons I wanted to get them in was because all these software like Waze and Google, right, say, speed camera ahead, right, and things like that. And so that I think will affect at least even truckers' behaviors, and if people know about that for people who use that. And that's one way to sort of, it's underlying using technology to affect behavior. It's not about getting muddy or catching people, it's about making them slow down.
And it's so risky for the police officers.
The speed trap ahead is not about anyone slowing down for safety. They just want to don't want to get ticketed.
Right.
And points on your license.
Unfortunately, is there any in the country that you know of cross-section study of where marijuana has been legalized and the fatal or serious accidents?
Colorado was first. And so
Colorado wasn't first. Oh, God, no.
legalizing marijuana.
No. Washington State was first, and Washington State was first.
I would look at those states that have had it longer.
I'm wondering, because I only say that because somebody said people don't see using marijuana as impaired driving. So I will,
There's no good way to check how recently you think ingested.
There was a huge discussion.
No, I know that,
at General Assembly.
because it has such a low half-life.
Yeah.
Because it has such a low half-life with how much stays in your body. Yeah. But the only way to know is to just do kind of studies for places that have legalized and see if there was a study that was done that showed slip and falls, how much they went up and how many people fell off roofs.
So don't drive and don't hurt
It's actually about people who were in construction and working they're working on the roof. Yeah. All right, so thank you. All right, I literally put away my finger already. I think the next thing is, Ms. Beckman, do you have any comments for today?
I do, Madam Chair. I would like to note that the CTB Speak Share Improvement Program and legislative joint meeting where ourselves, NBTC, could be VRE, it's a lot of us are to have the joint public meeting, and that will be May 1st over at the VDOT Nova District office. This year, because of legislation, the TPB has been invited to the bill passed stating that the TPB may be invited. So the TPB has been invited to participate at this meeting. It will be live streamed as well. So for anyone who cannot attend in person, it will be live streamed.
You can watch it. You cannot offer virtual comments.
I remember that meeting last year. I remember the room was like 50 degrees. It was so cold.
So you. The other thing I would like to note that because last month you adopted the budget for FY24, we did have the open house and consultant briefing on March 30th for the preliminary deployment plan for the regional BRT. And the RFP has been posted. It was posted April the 6th with a response deadline May 11th, May the 11th. We also held a travel model workshop. It was here on March the 10th, and it was well received. We have reps, and these are the modeling people. So this was really out of my league. I came and said welcome and sat down. But we had reps from FHWA, state DOTs, MPOs, local counties, etc. And then the last thing I'd like to mention, we did have our 8th annual transportation roundtable that was across the street. Great topics, well attended. and we are looking to continue moving this ahead. That's all that I would like to know that's in my report, but I would like to introduce, we have a new staff member sitting in the back, Hannah Pajewski.
Close.
I'm gonna get it right, but Hannah joined us a few weeks ago and we're very happy that she's here. She's on the planning team, so we're happy to have Hannah aboard. So now we no longer have that vacancy. And Madam Chair, that is all that I have.
Thank you, Ms. Blackman. I don't have chair comments. I always feel like I should, but I don't. So if anyone else has anything for the good of the room, let me know. Otherwise, we are, yes, absolutely.
So a few of you know, and a lot of you don't, my husband passed away on the 23rd of March. 3-year battle with a blood cancer. So, and I got a lovely basket from MBTA, and I just wanted to thank everybody for their emails, texts, calls. It's been an adjustment, but we move forward. So, but I just wanted to say thank you for that. So I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did have one more thing, because last month we did acknowledge Rob Dickerson's retirement. Well, tonight is his last.
1 minute.
We gave you a gift tonight, we just wish you well. No, but tonight is Rob's last meeting with us.
Thank you. All right, good. We are adjourned.
Yeah.
She does.